Episode 141, 13 Examples of Self-Discipline.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
And here we are with episode 141 of the very best podcast in the world, your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. Now, I got an extensive email over the weekend asking in meticulous and many letters, like A's, B's, and C's and everything, about self-discipline and why it is so important, because, right, a lot of things just happen and fall into place and whatever. So it was a big, very long email that one of our listeners, one of you, actually asked. And before I continue, I promised you I would bug you more often to share these episodes with, friends and family and whatnot. People, for instance, who maybe lack, from your perspective, self-discipline, who could use a little bit of a kick in the butt to, grow more self-disciplined, become more self-disciplined. And go to the website, theverybestpodcastintheworld.com, and below every episode, there's a link to subscribe to our podcast, to this little itty bitty show, which is growing exponentially. I never thought it would, because, as I repeatedly mentioned, it started out as a piece of satire, as a persiflage against, all of these self-proclaimed, we're going to make you rich gurus, improve your life people, and then you listen to or watch one of their videos and they ask you to sign up and, that whole ordeal. We ain't got nothing of that. So this podcast is purely altruistic. If you care to support it, please share these episodes with, like I said, anyone who might be worth or interested in listening to it, thereby spreading the word, thereby helping, your friends and family develop personal supremacy as well. There we go. Now we got it. So upon receiving this email, I spent, I think it came like Friday, very late at night. And I read it and went to bed over it. And, not that I couldn't sleep, but it actually, I was kind of rotating thoughts about, what is self-discipline. And so I spent the weekend planning one of the episodes, the first one, actually. Thank you, Joseph, by the way, for your email. Came up with 13 examples, probably, close to 3 dozen in the first instance. But eventually I kind of boiled it down to 13 examples of what self-discipline could be. And these are the ones that I'm going to share with you today, in the hopes that, either for yourself, but more importantly so for people in your sphere of influence, will benefit from. So without further ado, let's get fucking right down to it. So number one, and I think actually also these are not necessarily in chronological order, but the first and most important one I kind of put at the top, and it came into my head almost, right away when I thought of it, was meeting your own deadlines, right? And so, why is this important? Up of all, right? It's a very interesting question that probably a lot of you will have in your head. What about what's up with deadlines, right? Um, Notice how I said your own deadlines, right? So every task that you commit to should have a deadline to it. If it's not imposed by you, maybe it's imposed by whoever set the task, right? But to adhere to the deadlines you set yourself, that's the thing about self-discipline, right? So let's say, you want to, I don't know, fix a leak in the roof in the shed in the garden, right? And it's a good idea to do that ASAP, right? Because if you don't fix it, your roof construction is going to start to rot and so on and so forth. So, set your deadline maybe by tomorrow, particularly because, replacing a shingle or putting a little bit of silicone or, roof fixing material, tar or whatever it is on there ain't going to take you so much time, so you can spare those 10 minutes, maybe 30 if you have to go to the hardware store to actually pick up the material or, whatever it is, right? And then you slam it on there and you're done. Put away the ladder, preferably, and then you're good to go. So, deadlines come usually with consequences if you don't meet them. And not only is that, important, like with the roof example, but it's also important to be true to yourself, right? You are the one who set the deadline, right? If you're going to say, well, I'm going to fix the roof, period, not a lot is going to come because you're not seeing the consequences that it could potentially have. But, meeting your own deadlines, particularly your own deadlines, is insanely important for, not only to yourself, because it's very motivating and if the deadline is a kick in the ass for yourself as an additional motivator, just get it done, and if it's on the deadline, get it fucking done. And if it's too big of a task to be done on one deadline, then, split it up into smaller tasks. That would be me. It's like, it's very difficult for me to grasp not the deadline that something has to be finished, but for me, it's easier to work with smaller compartmentalized tasks because I can, kind of attach the requirement that one task has towards the other and so on and so forth. So number 2, not eating in front of your screen. And you're like, what the fuck, right? Why should I not eat in front of a screen, right? Number 1, you paid money for hopefully good food. I hope that you, in the previous, many of the previous episodes, understood the importance of good food, not only for your physical, but also for your mental health, right? If you haven't, go back, listen to the episodes about food. And if you have, if you don't find them, send me an email. I'll look them up for you. I failed at doing so before the show. But good food in particular is something you should enjoy, right? Even if it's not good food. If it's junk food, it will taste fucking good. So enjoy it wholeheartedly and be present in the moment that you enjoy the food, right? The moment you start to distract any of your senses from that experience is going to lose, its importance, right? Because you're taking attention away from enjoying the food with your tongue, with your nose, with your eyes, preferably if it's well made, the sound and the feeling of actually chewing it and experiencing the consistency, etc. Food is much more than just taking in calories and vitamins and other stuff that gets converted into energy to keep you alive and to keep you going. The more you value food, the more your body actually values it as well. There's a psychological aspect to eating. And the moment you introduce anything else into your, meal experience, it's just going to lose in importance. Number 3, doing the final rep at the gym. Now, those careful listeners who actually listen to Exercise Fridays will remember the first episode where I kind of almost pissed myself laughing about the fact that I didn't know how to spell exercise because I'm such a nut. But this goes a long way, and is kind of like pars pro toto for anything that needs to get done. And I am a huge specialist at finishing things 99%, and then the 1% kind of fails over, right? I mentioned that in other episodes where I said, hey, don't worry so much about perfection, right? Yeah, but it's the final leg that kind of closes, and maybe it's the fact that I never ever visit the gym, and therefore I'm not kind of familiar with, doing the last rep of whatever, push-ups, sit-ups, and whatnot, because I stay fit walking around the house all day, which sums up to about, depending on the day, anywhere between 4 and 7 kilometers. Big house, obviously, but it's about finishing up. And I think that's what that kind of thing that came to my mind when I contemplated that example. Number 4, turning off Netflix on a set time. We do that every night because my better half needs her 7 hours of sleep, and she has to get up in the morning, and so we have to kind of time that she's got those 7 hours, right? And so at a set time, we will, regardless of what's going on, turn the motherfucker off, right? It's our kind of together time. We enjoy a good movie or whatever, but at time X, we will turn it off, regardless of whether we're in the final boss getting shot in the head soon or whatever. We're just going to kill it and then go over into, putting ourselves to bed. And that's a very important sign of self-discipline, because a lot of people, when they start binging, and I'm one of those, again, it's about really the difficulty of actually switching it off, because the suspense is just so fucking high. And that's actually, one of the points of making a suspenseful TV show, is to keep the people hooked, right? And I remember this was like, 2014, 2015. Someone recommended Breaking Bad, and I'd never seen it before. So I actually, went in and watched it, and I binged that son of a bitch in, a little bit of an extended weekend. I think I flew home on Thursday evening, and on Friday morning, I kind of turned it on, and I spent the entire fucking weekend watching Breaking Bad, and I couldn't, kind of rip myself loose from it, because it was just so, what's going to happen next? And the art and the self-discipline in this example is actually being able to kill it and to say, okay, enough. I got other things to do, and I'm responsible. Coming from me, that's kind of ironic. But, turning it off and having that discipline to say, okay, enough, I'm going to continue watching tomorrow. Because, I think that's a generational thing, right? A lot of young people will only be used to Netflix. The generation that I'm from, it was kind of tragic when you had to stop in the middle of an episode, which was airing on TV, because you wouldn't, get the chance to watch it again, right? You could videotape it, yeah, but did you? No, because the cassettes were so fucking expensive and had so much stuff on it that you did want to watch. So, a lot of people will feel my pain, right? And that has kind of disappeared. However, obviously the TV shows have gotten even more suspenseful that you get hooked on them so bad. So that being said, it's this turning off and tuning out and saying, okay, enough, and I got shit to do. Number 5, not touching your phone on a date or meeting. I was on a project many, many moons ago, And it was became kind of like this tradition that all of the stakeholders would meet for dinner sooner or later, and we would all meet at a predefined location, have our dinner, whatever. And it was just so fucking bothering that everybody was constantly on their phones. So what we did was the coolest thing in the world. We would order a basket or a plate or something. And everyone put their phone, face down on the plate in a big stack. And the first one who would grab for their phone, for whatever reason, had to pay the bill for everyone, which, at 5 to 20 people kind of made a difference in your bank account. But that being said, that was a good trick to kind of pay respect not only to the person or the people that you were with, right? It made a really difference in the quality of conversation that we had. Now, same is true if you're on a date, right? If you're meeting with someone and you're constantly on your phone, that's quite unromantic and signals to the other that you're not really, 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 really deeply interested in them because you got other shit to do. And, let's face it, if you're in meeting with someone face to face, that person has priority, right? Shit, yeah, a very important phone call can come in at any time that, your grandmother has died or something, right? But what's the probability of that? Let's face it. Number 6, putting your phone in a different room. This kind of fulfills the same purpose. And I explained this in one of the sleeping episodes. It was also an exercise, I believe, where I said that, if you suffer from wild thoughts going through your head while you're in the process of falling asleep, take a notebook and a pen, old fashioned, because here's what happens. These phones are so devious in capturing your attention that, it's very difficult to write something down very quickly and then you put the phone down. Right? Being honest to yourself, it's happened to you that you just wanted to briefly do something, ended up doing 1,000 other things, and eventually forgot what you actually wanted to do. And so, they're a big heap of distractions. So keeping it in a different room actually makes a lot of sense. Number 7, making healthy, fresh dinners every night. It kind of goes contrary to what I just said with the restaurant. I say this as someone who really, really, really enjoys cooking and experimenting and, using tons of herbs and spices and very individual meals and creations and whatever not. And, kind of goes into, that's what I meant with that these things are kind of like out of order. It's, you enjoy the meal, right? It's not only the preparation and the fact that it's healthy. It's actually that you devote your focus to enjoying the meal with all your senses tuned on the meal, right? If you have somebody else preparing the meal and you're kind of like, I don't know, adding tons of hot sauce to it because, you're spicy type, that's kind of frustrating, right? And so in that sense, I think, adding value to your food or your culinary experience is the focus and the preparation and the focus in the preparation, right? Number 8, going out for a run even when it's raining. Okay, this one wasn't from me. This was actually inspired by a friend of mine who does that. Could never understand. Not even Stevie goes out if it's raining because his fur could get wet and it's uncomfortable and stuff. But there are those people who need their exercise. I get it. I'm not one of them and probably never will be. But putting yourself in a bit of a miserable situation when you're doing something you really enjoy, exposing yourself to that kind of is the fact of self-discipline, that you take the rain into account when you want to go for your run, despite the fact that, it is raining and you won't be as performant. The fact that you're exercising is more important than the circumstances, right? And that goes for sports in a variety of ways, right? You can have your own equipment that you need or whatever. You can attach tons of requirements to it. But the less you do that, the more liberating it is, right? So that just as a further example. So the next one is actually a copycat, which is number 9, going out or going for your workout, even though you are tired. And that's important to understand. I think in this context, the self-discipline is that you overcome your tiredness, is that a word? Your fatigue or whatever it is, to actually bring up the self-discipline to do something good for your body despite the fact that you're tired, right? I think that is a similar example to the run that I just mentioned. Number 10, using the same phone number model. Jesus Christ. Let's start over. Using the same phone model for 3 years, right? It's very easy, I think, in a lot of countries that after 24 months, you can get a new phone, extend your contract, get a new phone, while your old phone is actually still doing quite well. It's just that the new model's got new bells and whistles. And the importance and the self-discipline part in this is actually, why do you want to spend that extra money, right? For a camera that has maybe, I don't know, half a megapixel more, resolution that it will bring you later on, which, is at today's camera or screen resolution is almost invisible, and so that's kind of like where the self-discipline point is, I really need to spend that money, despite the fact that my phone is still functioning quite well. This kind of got the idea because I'm still running an iPhone 10, simply because I couldn't be bothered to extend my contract, so it's kind of running idle right now. I pay shitloads of less money and the phone works perfectly fine, and that kind of like brought me back to the self-discipline bit because, despite the fact that I'm a nerd and I'm a total tech nut, it was quite easy to jump off that ship and say, well, it's still working. And we're 2 generations down. And then, oh, wow, the next one had a way better processor and it was so much better and shinier and whatnot. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, sure. But I'm not going to spend, that much money on those little bells and whistles. So that is that example. Number 11, eating the same food 4 times a week to lose weight. So, the self-discipline part in that is that you kind of get sick of eating the same food, or tired of eating the same food for a couple of days, right, in a row. It kind of becomes stale, right, after day number 2. And so the self-discipline bit is overcoming eating the same food to lose weight if it's healthy, and whatever. And I think, one of the other factors that weighs in here is actually, and that brought me to taking this example into closer consideration, is that you will eat less, right? It's not because you've eaten it for 2 days. On the 3rd day, you're going to be like, yeah, I need to eat, but I'm not going to eat that big of a portion because I've had it for 2 days. And that's one of the important things that you need to consider in this example. Number 12. Passing up on a huge sale with extra money in the bank. And this kind of is in line with what I mentioned about, buying the same phone model. So it's resisting, the self-discipline is resisting the urge to buy shit you don't need with money you, well, in that case, have to impress people you don't like, right? There's a very famous quote on that. And that's the thing here. And I had that now on a variety of occasions. Where I said, do I really need that? Is that going to improve my life so significantly that I'm willing to shell out tons of money while I could be investing it or, whatever. And that's a good idea. We're going to do an episode about investment tomorrow, by the way. And and so, I passed those sales despite the fact that they were, very good deals. That kind of flew by and I didn't grab them. And it was kind of liberating, and that's something I think, which is another very important point about self-discipline. Last but not least, reading a book even when you don't feel like it. Now, my original intent was to take a very boring subject like business, reading a business book when you don't feel like it. And that didn't really come true because for me, reading is very difficult. I know for a lot of you, it's very liberating. But for me, due to my eye condition, it is quite difficult for me to focus on a book. So I'm more into audiobooks. And it's this self-discipline thing about learning and expanding your horizon is reading books, or in my case, listening to books. So for me, it's not only books. I listen to podcasts pretty much all day. When I'm working, doing shit in the house or on the house or around the house, kind of like the manual labor thing where you don't need to spend a lot of time thinking. I kind of occupy my mind with podcasts and audiobooks and, pre-COVID news. And I kind of tuned that one out. But it goes to say that, keeping your mind occupied and learning and being willing to learn and going that extra mile by reading a book, that occupies you quite much and takes quite a lot of time, to get into a book and to get into the situation. Where did you leave off? Do you have to flip 2 pages back because you forgot and you read yesterday? No, but it doesn't fucking matter, right? Reading the book, taking the time, that's the self-discipline aspect to it. However, it can be intertwined with shit that you need to do. I'm imagining a lot of you will need to do your own laundry. And, what is more boring than folding t-shirts and ironing shit and whatnot? So, making it more exciting by listening to, funny podcasts, for instance, is something very interesting to do. And so, therefore, it's kind of very interesting to tie this up with, reading a book and learning by reading a book, and that you can actually combine it in a way where it doesn't take up all of your attention. Boom. Those were the 13 examples of self-discipline. So that being said, again, the bother button comes in. It's very interesting to share this shit, and particularly with self-discipline. I think, you will know one or the other person who, may benefit from the examples I just outlined to you. And so send this episode to them, share it with them so that they may learn. And if you have stumbled upon this podcast and you are not subscribed, do so. It's good for you. Seriously, though. I'm out. We're going to wrap this up right here, right now. And tomorrow we're going to talk about investing. So make sure to tune in. And until then, I wish you a successful day. And if you already had your successful day, have a good night. Peace out and see you tomorrow.